Welcome to the Hot News Channel, where we strip away the noise to analyze today's breaking stories. It is Sunday, February 22, 2026.
And if you are feeling a serious sense of vertigo today, you are definitely not alone. We are looking at a day that historians are likely going to circle in red ink.
Absolutely. I mean, this isn't just a heavy news cycle. It feels like a genuine pivotal moment for the globe.
Yeah, game changer is an overused word, but today it actually applies.
Right, because we have three massive global storylines converging simultaneously right now. We have the exposure of the global elite's darkest secrets reaching an absolute breaking point in the UK. We have a full-blown constitutional crisis unfolding in Washington, D.C. And perhaps most terrifyingly, we are watching the clock tick down to a potential world war in the Middle East.
It really is the collapse of the official narrative. That's the thread tying all of this together. If you think about it, we have a British royal in handcuffs right now. We have the U.S. Supreme Court stripping a sitting president of his primary economic weapon. And we have the drumbeat of a war that nobody seems to want, but everyone is just, sleepwalking into.
Exactly.
The old rules, the guardrails we all thought existed, they are breaking down in real time.
So let's unpack this, and I want to start with the story that has absolutely dominated the headlines since this morning. The fall of Prince Andrew.
Right.
Or I suppose we should be calling him Andrew Mountbatten Windsor now, because the title of Prince feels a bit vestigial at this point, given the circumstances.
It's a stunning development. I mean, we haven't seen a senior royal in handcuffs in nearly 400 years.
400 years? Think about that.
Charles I, basically.
Right. So putting my fact-finding hat on here, the reports coming out of London confirm that Andrew was arrested today on his 66th birthday.
Happy birthday indeed.
Yeah, quite the gift. But here is where it gets really interesting for us and where the narrative completely shifts. Everyone expected that if he ever went down, if he was ever actually charged, it would be for the sex crimes.
Right. The assault allegations?
Exactly. The allegations involving Virginia Giuffre or the other victims. But that is not what is on the charge sheet today.
No, and that's what is fascinating here. The specific charge listed is misconduct in public office.
Which sounds incredibly dry.
It does. To the layman, that might sound like a bureaucratic slap on the wrist, like he misused a company credit card. But in the UK legal system, this is severe.
How severe?
It carries a maximum sentence of life imprisonment.
Wow.
And the specifics of this charge are not about sexual deviancy directly. They are about espionage and state betrayal.
Let's dig into that, because the hard data here is wild. According to the reporting we've seen, specifically from analysts reviewing the police statements, this stems from emails found in the newly released Epstein files.
The famous unredacted dumps.
Yes. And these emails appear to show Andrew forwarding confidential UK trade reports directly to Jeffrey Epstein.
And we need to emphasize the timeline on that.
Right. We're not talking about a casual forward weeks later. We're talking about sending highly sensitive state information 5 minutes after he received it.
5 minutes.
5 minutes after receiving it in his capacity as Britain's special trade envoy.
See, that's the detail that turns this from a careless mistake to being compromised.
How so?
If I send you a highly classified document 5 minutes after I get it, that implies a standing order.
Like he was tasked to do it.
Exactly. That implies urgency and a pre-existing arrangement. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it reframes the entire Epstein saga.
Which changes everything.
It does. For years, the media has sold us this story, that Epstein was just a pervert with a private island who liked to hang out with powerful people to boost his ego. But this arrest suggests something much, much darker. It shifts the narrative from sexual deviancy to espionage. Why was Andrew sending trade secrets to Epstein? Because Epstein wasn't just a financier, he was an intelligence broker.
And that leads us directly into the deep state connection that is finally, after years of rumors, being dragged into the sunlight.
Finally.
We have extensive reporting based on the analysis by Cenk Uygur and Tara Palmieri. They are diving into these new file dumps, and they are finding things that the mainstream legacy media has tried to bury for a decade.
The foreign intelligence angle. This has always been the third rail of the Epstein story. You could talk about the island, you could talk about the planes, but you couldn't talk about the intelligence agencies.
But now we have hard data. There is a specific FBI document that has surfaced in this dump. And this is documented fact, folks, not a conspiracy board. This document cites a confidential human source who explicitly claims that Jeffrey Epstein was an agent of Mossad.
And not just Epstein.
Right. This source claims that Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, who was a massive media tycoon in the UK, was a legendary spy for Israel.
Now, Robert Maxwell's connection to Mossad is historically pretty well documented.
Right. Didn't he have a state funeral?
He did. He was given a state funeral in Israel, attended by the absolute upper echelon of their intelligence elite. But seeing his name linked so explicitly to Epstein's operation in official FBI files is a total game changer.
It provides the missing link.
It connects the dots on what many have suspected was a massive, highly organized blackmail operation. The theory, and honestly, it's becoming less of a theory and more of a documented reality today, is that the sexual crimes, the horrific trafficking of underage girls, was a honey trap mechanism.
It was functional.
Exactly. It wasn't just for pleasure or deviancy. It was designed to control global politicians and business leaders.
And there is one piece of evidence in these files that it's almost cinematic in how blatant it is.
The email.
Yes, the email exchange. We have an email between Jeffrey Epstein and former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak.
Let's read the details on this because it's unbelievable.
So Barak asks Epstein to clarify something to the press. He says, essentially, tell them I don't work for Mossad.
Right.
And Epstein replies, you mean tell them I don't work for Mossad?
To which Barak replies with a winking emoji.
A winking emoji.
I mean, in a discussion about intelligence agency affiliation between a former prime minister of a nuclear state and a convicted sex offender.
You literally cannot make this up.
You can't. It implies a level of familiarity and shared understanding that is frankly chilling. It strongly suggests that the blackmail operation was state-sponsored or at least state-adjacent.
Which explains so much.
It explains why justice has been so incredibly hard to come by for the victims. You aren't just fighting a rich guy with good lawyers. You are fighting a state intelligence apparatus.
And speaking of justice, or the lack thereof, we have to talk about the political earthquake regarding the Donald Trump allegations found in these newly released files.
Yes, we do.
Now, we always strive to be impartial here. We are simply reporting on the contents of these documents. We are not taking a stance on guilt or innocence, but the details that were temporarily deleted by the DOJ and then mysteriously re-uploaded are incredibly graphic.
They are deeply disturbing.
And we need to be clear for the listener. These are allegations contained in official FBI files, often stemming from victims or witnesses who were interviewed. But the specificity is what really stands out here.
That's the key. Usually when stories are fabricated out of whole cloth, they are vague. They lack anchor points. These are not vague at all.
No, they aren't. We have an allegation regarding a 13-year-old girl in New Jersey going back approximately 35 years ago. The details in the file involve forced oral sex and physical violence when the girl allegedly bit him.
It is awful.
Then there are descriptions in the files of what they called calendar girl parties at Mar-a-Lago, which allegedly involved genital measurements of children.
It is stomach churning. And this raises a massive, unavoidable question about our current political reality.
How is he surviving this?
Exactly. In any other era of American history, a fraction of this, just a rumor of this, would sink a presidency. It would end a public figure's career instantly and permanently.
But Trump is still in the White House.
He's still operating, he's commanding the military, and his defense is simply, I've been exonerated, or he just claims it's entirely false.
So why hasn't this sunk him? Is the public just entirely numb to scandal at this point?
It's not numbness. I really don't think it is. I call it mutual assured destruction.
Explain that.
It's not just Trump in these files. That's the protective shield. The files implicate everyone.
Right.
Bill Clinton is there. Bill Gates is in there with allegations about asking Epstein for advice on how to end his marriage. Les Wexner is there. When everyone at the absolute top of the socioeconomic pyramid is implicated, the system inherently protects itself.
Because if one pillar falls, the roof comes down.
Precisely. If Trump goes down for this, he takes the whole house of cards with him. He knows where the bodies are buried because, according to these files, he was at the cemetery with them.
You mentioned Les Wexner, the billionaire behind Victoria's Secret and L Brands. There is a fascinating, almost bizarre nugget from the analysis by Dimitri Lascaris regarding Wexner's deposition.
This is one of the most telling details of the whole saga.
Right. So in this deposition, Wexner claims on the record that Epstein stole over $200 million from him.
$200 million, just siphoned it away.
Just took it. And yet Wexner never sued him. He never pressed criminal charges. He basically just let it go.
And Lascaris points out the brilliant analogy Wexner himself used. This is the elephant in the room, literally. Wexner quoted his own father in that deposition.
What did he say?
He said his father taught him never to get in a pissing contest with an elephant.
Wow.
Now, think about the scale of that analogy for a second.
Yeah.
Les Wexner is a billionaire. He is a titan of global industry. If he is the small guy in this scenario, who is the elephant?
Right. It implies Epstein held a kind of power over Wexner that was worth far more than $200 million in cash.
Exactly. You do not just walk away from a $200 million theft unless the person who stole it has something on you that could cost you everything. Your freedom, your legacy, your entire empire.
It reinforces the blackmail theory perfectly.
It does. Epstein wasn't working for Wexner as a financial advisor. In a very real way, he was handling him.
It is a terrifying glimpse into how the world actually works at that level.
Yeah.
But while the elite are eating each other in courtrooms and depositions over these files, there's a much more kinetic, immediate threat looming over all of us. Let's pivot to the War Watch segment.
The Middle East.
Yes, we are counting down to a potential conflict with Iran, and the signs are ominous.
This isn't just diplomatic posturing anymore. You look at the hard data, the military movement on the board is undeniable. This is heavy metal moving across the map.
Let's look at the specific assets that have been deployed, because the scale is breathtaking. We have the USS Gerald R. Ford, and for the listener, this is the newest, most advanced nuclear-powered aircraft carrier in the fleet. It has just entered the Western Mediterranean.
Right.
And simultaneously, we have the USS Abraham Lincoln Strike Group parked right in the Arabian Sea.
This is what military strategists call a dual carrier posture.
Which is rare.
Very rare. You don't move two entire carrier strike groups into a single theater for a routine training exercise. The logistics and cost are astronomical. This is an invasion level or massive strike level force.
Yeah.
And we're seeing the supporting assets moving into place too.
Yeah, the three E-3 Sentry AOHCS that have been moved to the region.
Exactly.
For our listeners who aren't military buffs, why is the movement of those three specific planes so significant?
The E-3 Sentry is essentially the quarterback of the sky.
Okay.
It's that massive plane with the giant rotating radar dome on top. It manages theater dominance and command and control for a complex air war. You bring the AOHCS in when you need to coordinate hundreds of fighter jets, bombers, and drones simultaneously. They are the eyes that see everything over the horizon.
So it's traffic control for a massive strike?
Exactly. Moving three of them is a massive blinking red signal that the U.S. is preparing for complex, high-intensity aerial combat.
It feels like a repeat of June 2025, doesn't it? The 12-day war. But the energy feels heavier this time.
It is heavier because the stakes have escalated exponentially. The 12-day war was a shock to the system, but this deployment looks like the empire striking back. The U.S. is positioning itself for a blow that is meant to be decisive.
But there is a massive trap here.
A limited strike delusion.
Yes. We are hearing reports, and we have to cite the analysis by Greg Stoker and Syed M. Morandi on this. They note that Trump is actively considering a limited military strike to pressure Tehran.
Just a tap on the chin to get them to back down.
Right. Hit a few radar installations, maybe an IRGC base, and call it a day.
That is a complete fantasy. And both Stoker and Morandi point this out clearly. It is a dangerous delusion to think you can control the escalation ladder. Iran's defense doctrine has fundamentally changed since 2025.
They aren't playing the proportional game anymore.
No, they are no longer operating on a tit-for-tat basis. They are actively preparing for what their leadership calls an existential war.
Meaning all bets are off.
Exactly. The leadership in Tehran has signaled very clearly through back channels and public statements that any strike on their sovereign territory, whether it's a single cruise missile or a full barrage from the Ford, will be met with a full-scale, unrestricted response.
There is no such thing as a limited strike against a power that views you as an existential threat.
Exactly. They will view a small strike as the opening salvo of a regime change war, and they will throw everything they have.
And they aren't alone on the geopolitical chessboard. This is where the alliances get incredibly messy for Washington. We have reports from the analysis by Mark Sleboda noting that Russian and Chinese ships are currently in the region conducting joint drills.
Right in the middle of the tension zone.
Yes, but it's more than just ships doing maneuvers. Sleboda also details reports of Chinese cargo planes landing in Iran right now.
Bringing in hardware.
Delivering specific radar and satellite capabilities.
The axis is solidifying in real time. We are seeing a coalescing of the anti-Western powers. Now, China and Russia are probably not going to put their own boots on the ground to fight and die for Iran.
No, that's a step too far for them.
But they don't have to.
That
They are providing the real-time intelligence and the high-end technology to make a U.S. attack incredibly costly.
force multipliers.
Exactly. Think about the implications. If Iranian air defense suddenly has real-time access to Chinese satellite tracking data, the U.S. stealth advantage is severely degraded. They will see the F-35s coming.
And the nightmare scenario for the U.S. isn't just a military bloody nose, it's the economic blowback.
The oil.
Yes, you're talking about targeting the global energy jugular.
I am. Iran has the demonstrated capability to target the massive oil fields in Saudi Arabia's eastern province. And we have to remember the demographics there. The population in that specific Saudi province is largely Shia.
So they are culturally and religiously sympathetic to Iran.
Exactly. It's a soft underbelly. If Iran feels its back is against the wall and decides to burn the house down, they will take global energy markets with them.
What does that look like in numbers?
We are talking about oil prices hitting levels that would shatter the Western economies overnight. If you take Saudi and UAE production offline simultaneously with precision drone and missile strikes, you are looking at $200, maybe $300 a barrel for crude.
Which means double-digit inflation instantly. It means gas rationing. It's a game of chicken with global economic stakes.
Total systemic shock.
Is there any diplomatic off-ramp left? We know from the reports that Oman is trying desperately to mediate.
Oman is always the intermediary. They are basically the Switzerland of the Middle East. They pass the notes between Washington and Tehran. But the fundamental problem is that the negotiation styles are totally incompatible.
Right.
You have Trump's approach, which is basically a Sopranos-style negotiation.
Break your kneecaps if you don't take the deal?
Exactly. Threaten to destroy your economy and kill your generals if you don't capitulate. But then you have Iran's religious and ideological resistance model. They do not respond to bullying the way a real estate contractor in New York does.
It's a completely different paradigm.
To them, resistance isn't just a political strategy. It is a spiritual duty. They cannot back down without losing their entire legitimacy.
There's a really interesting theory regarding Trump's personal stakes in all of this, brought forward by the analysis by George Galloway.
Well, the financial angle.
Yeah. Galloway suggests that Trump doesn't actually want this war at all.
It's a very plausible theory when you look at the ledger. Follow the money.
Always.
Trump's family wealth. If you look at the Kushner investment funds, the Trump organization's future Gulf and hotel projects, it is heavily tied up in the Gulf states.
The UAE and Saudi Arabia.
Right. If a massive regional war breaks out, those countries are the immediate front line. Their economies, their gleaming glass cities, their luxury hotels, they get destroyed or severely damaged in retaliatory strikes from Iran or its proxies.
So his own empire is at risk.
Galloway argues that Trump is being aggressively pushed into this conflict by the neoconservative elements in Washington and the Israel lobby. But his own wallet, his family's generational wealth, is screaming at him not to pull the trigger.
So we have a president caught between his massive political donors, his hawkish allies, and his own bank account, with the entire world hanging in the balance.
It's a pressure cooker.
And if that wasn't enough pressure on the man sitting in the Oval Office, he just took a massive, unprecedented blow from the one institution he thought he had total control over.
The Supreme Court.
Yes. Let's move to the constitutional crisis segment, because this ruling from the court is a political earthquake.
It is the absolute shattering of executive power as we've known it for the last decade. The Supreme Court, in a 6-3 decision, officially struck down Trump's use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act.
IEPA.
Right, IEEPA.
Yeah.
They struck down his ability to use it to arbitrarily impose massive tariffs.
And the coalition of justices that did it is what's truly surprising here.
It wasn't just the liberal wing.
No. We have Chief Justice John Roberts joining the three liberals, which happens occasionally, but he also brought along Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett.
Trump's own appointees.
Exactly. The judges he put on the bench turned on him on his signature policy.
That has to sting on a deeply personal level.
Hmm.
But look at the immense legal implication of this ruling. IEEPA has been the Swiss Army knife of the modern presidency.
How so?
Trump has used tariffs not just as a boring economic policy to protect steelworkers, he uses them as a primary weapon. He uses them to bully European allies, to punish adversaries like China, and to basically conduct massive foreign policy initiatives completely bypassing Congress.
He weaponized trade.
He did. And the court just stepped in and said, no, you cannot do that. The Emergency Powers Act was not designed for this.
So they disarmed him.
They legally disarmed his favorite weapon. They are strictly enforcing the non-delegation doctrine. They are telling Congress, you cannot just hand your constitutional power of the purse and trade regulation over to the executive branch and make him a king.
Trump's reaction was, well, predictably furious.
Meltdown.
He was quoted directly saying, I can destroy the trade, I can destroy the country, but I can't charge a little fee.
And that quote right there reveals absolutely everything about his internal psychology.
The idea that he can destroy the country.
Exactly. He views the presidency as a tool of ultimate unchecked power. To be told by a group of judges, especially people he nominated and expects loyalty from, that he has legal limits, it is profoundly humiliating for him.
He feels cornered.
We are seeing a cornered president. And a cornered president is dangerous, especially when he is desperately looking for a way to reassert dominance and project strength.
He is already trying to pivot to find a loophole. He is currently talking about using the Trade Act of 1974, specifically Section 301, to basically just reimpose the exact same tariffs under a different legal name.
Good luck with that.
Right, because companies aren't waiting around. They are already suing the federal government. We are talking about billions of dollars in potential refunds being demanded for tariffs that have now been ruled unconstitutional and illegal.
It is total chaos for the financial markets. Business, above all else, craves certainty.
They need to forecast.
Exactly. A CEO needs to know what the cost of steel or microchips will be next quarter. Trump is introducing total absolute volatility into the system. He's essentially saying, if I can't use law A, I will use law B, and if the courts strike that down, I will just break things until I get my way.
And that uncertainty is the absolute enemy of a stable economy.
It freezes investment.
And frankly, the domestic economy is already on incredibly shaky ground, which brings us perfectly to the domestic economy segment.
The bubble economy.
We are looking at bubbles inflating and popping everywhere, but the housing market in particular is behaving in ways that defy all traditional economic logic.
It is the new housing crisis, although, frankly, it is just the old crisis pumped full of steroids.
The hard data from the National Association of Realtors is just baffling. Listen to this. Housing prices hit an all-time high in January 2026.
Despite mortgage rates.
Exactly. The median home price nationally is now $396,800.
Almost $400,000 for a median house.
Right. But at the exact same time, sales volume has dropped to its absolute lowest level since 2022.
It is stagflation localized entirely within the housing sector. Prices are skyrocketing, but transaction volume is dead.
Nobody is moving.
Because nobody can afford to move.
Yeah.
And there's a glaring contradiction in federal policy here that is just brutal for the average working American.
Trump's stance on this.
Yes. Trump has explicitly stated on the record that he wants home prices to go up.
Which sounds crazy to a first-time buyer.
It is crazy to them.
Yeah.
But he views high home prices as a visible scorecard for his economic success because it protects the equity and wealth of existing homeowners.
Who are a massive voting bloc.
Exactly. That's his base. But that specific policy objective completely locks out an entire rising generation.
Millennials and Gen Z.
Right. It creates a neo-feudal system. You have a landed gentry who bought before 2020 and a permanent renter class who will literally never build generational wealth.
And it's not just the young generation getting crushed by this. The human cost is hitting the elderly incredibly hard, too. There was a heartbreaking CBS report featured in the source material about 87-year-olds, people who should be peacefully enjoying their twilight years, having to log on to apps to find roommates just to survive the rent increases.
87 years old and looking for a roommate on the internet.
It's dystopian.
It is a flashing red light of a break in social contract. When you have octogenarians bunking up with complete strangers because their fixed income can't cover the rent, and your political leader is actively cheering for housing prices to inflate further, you have a deep systemic failure of society.
And the instability isn't just intangible assets like housing. The AI bubble, the one thing that has essentially been propping up the stock market averages for the last 2 years, is finally bursting.
The reckoning has arrived for Silicon Valley.
The news about the massive NVIDIA and OpenAI deal collapsing is definitely the canary in the coal mine here.
It's a huge shift in sentiment.
They completely abandoned a planned $100 billion deal and instead settled for a massively scaled back $30 billion investment.
Which is still a lot of money, but the delta there is $70 billion of vanished hype.
Exactly. And look at OpenAI's internal reset. They officially dropped their long-term compute infrastructure targets from $1.4 trillion down to $600 billion.
That is a staggering downgrade.
More than half their projection wiped out.
It's a brutal reality check. We're watching the dot-com crash dynamics playing out all over again, just with different buzzwords.
Right. Instead of pets.com, it's generative AI.
Exactly. The hype cycle, the breathless promise that AI was going to magically solve every human problem and generate infinite, frictionless wealth is violently hitting the wall of physical reality.
Physical limits.
Yes. You cannot just print compute power out of thin air. You need massive amounts of electricity, you need highly specialized chips, you need cooling water, and most importantly, you need a software business model that actually generates sustainable profit.
Which they don't really have yet.
They don't. The financing is suddenly drying up because the actual tangible returns on these massive investments aren't materializing fast enough. The infinite growth narrative is crashing headfirst into finite world reality.
So to recap where we are domestically, we have an unaffordable housing crisis, a tech sector bubble that is violently deflating, and a president trapped in a constitutional crisis regarding his own trade powers.
A fragile foundation.
Extremely. Meanwhile, on the eastern front of Europe, the massive war that everyone seems to have conveniently forgotten about is entering a critical, incredibly dangerous new phase.
Ukraine.
Let's look at the Ukraine-Russia front segment.
It is the absolute definition of cognitive dissonance over there right now.
President Zelensky held a closed-door cabinet meeting recently and essentially dropped a bombshell on his government.
What did he say?
According to the reports, he told his cabinet that Ukraine must officially prepare for a war lasting at least 3 more years.
3 more years of this attrition.
And in the very same breath, he explicitly claimed to them, "We are not losing."
This is where political rhetoric completely collides with objective battlefield reality.
Because the maps say something different.
The maps say something entirely different. If you listen to the detailed tactical analysis from Alexander Mercouris, who painstakingly tracks the front lines village by village, day by day, the picture is incredibly grim for Kyiv.
Give us the hard data on that.
Russian armored and infantry forces are steadily advancing in the Zaporozhye sector.
Taking territory.
Yes. Mercouris notes they are capturing key logistical villages like Vishnev. And more critically, they are systematically closing the cauldron in the Donbass region.
The cauldron, that is a terrifying military term to hear.
It is the worst thing an infantryman can hear. It means encirclement.
Surrounded on all sides.
Exactly. It means tactical annihilation. When a defensive army is encircled in a cauldron, the supply lines are cut. No artillery shells come in, no wounded go out. They have exactly 2 choices left. Surrender en masse or be completely destroyed.
So for Zelensky to say they aren't losing?
For Zelensky to stand up in a secure bunker in Kyiv and emphatically say we are not losing while his most experienced, battle-hardened units are being systematically ground down in these cauldrons, it suggests a terrifying disconnect.
What's the strategy then?
It suggests he is either being lied to by his own sycophantic generals, or he is consciously lying to his own people and the West just to keep the foreign aid flowing.
And speaking of the West and their narratives, there's a massive new twist in the blame game regarding the destruction of the Nord Stream pipelines.
Oh, the Der Spiegel report.
Yes. The German outlet Der Spiegel has published a massive investigative report claiming that General Zaluzhny, who was Zelensky's former top military commander and the American CIA, knew all about the Nord Stream sabotage plan in advance.
They knew the strike was coming.
Yes, but the crucial detail in the report claims that President Zelensky himself was completely kept in the dark by his own military and by American intelligence.
Now that is a very, very convenient narrative, isn't it?
Feels a little too perfect.
It smells exactly like an intelligence community cleanup operation.
How so? Walk us through the logic.
Think about the geopolitical reality. The Western capitals know this war is going badly.
Right.
They know they might soon need to cut ties, reduce aid, or force a highly unpopular negotiation with Moscow. By pinning the Nord Stream sabotage, which, let's be clear, was a massive act of international terrorism against critical German energy infrastructure.
Right, an attack on a NATO ally.
Exactly. By pinning that solely on General Zaluzhny and a few rogue CIA elements, they create a perfect political lane to either protect or dump Zelensky as needed.
Give him plausible deniability.
Right. They can say, oh, he didn't know he's innocent of this terrorism, so we can still support him. Or, conversely, they can say, look, he has completely lost control of his own rogue military apparatus. He is a failed leader, and use that to set the stage for a forced resignation or a military coup.
It is high-stakes palace intrigue with massive global consequences.
It is. The intelligence agencies are shaping the narrative to give themselves exit ramps.
And it really seems like political elites everywhere are increasingly using these dark intelligence tactics against their own populations.
Weaponizing the state.
Which brings us perfectly to our final segment today, political corruption in the UK. Because this Labour Party scandal reads straight out of a Cold War spy novel.
It really does, and it parallels the U.S. themes we've been discussing absolutely perfectly.
We're looking at a deep investigation conducted by Paul Holden and the team at Novara Media. They uncovered, yes, APCO, and they hired them specifically to smear and discredit independent journalists.
And we need to be clear about why they were smearing these specific journalists. It wasn't over policy disagreements.
No.
These journalists were actively investigating massively undeclared financial donations to the think tank. We are talking about £700,000.
Nearly $1 million.
Exactly. That is a staggering amount of political money to just conveniently forget to declare to the Electoral Commission.
And the tactics APCO and Labour together allegedly used to silence this reporting were incredibly dirty.
Vicious.
According to the Holden and Novara Media analysis, they deliberately accused Jewish journalists who were looking into the funding of being unwitting Russian dupes.
In the standard playbook.
Right, smear them as foreign agents. Furthermore, they hired firms that actually represent Israeli weapons manufacturers, specifically Elbit Systems, to systematically target and harass domestic political critics within the UK.
This is the absolute weaponization of the information space. You have a mainstream political party using massive corporate intelligence and PR firms to completely destroy the professional reputations of independent reporters who are literally just doing their jobs.
It's following the money.
Following the money. It creates a massive chilling effect across the entire press corps. The message is clear. If you ask where our dark money comes from, we won't just ignore you. We will label you a traitor, a foreign agent, and destroy your livelihood.
It's the exact same playbook.
It is. It's the same playbook we see operating in the Epstein cover-up, in the manipulation of the war narratives in Ukraine, and in the U.S., political systems' attacks on dissidents. The global elites use the specialized tools of intelligence, covert spying, coordinated smears, financial blackmail to protect their power and hide their corruption.
So, bringing all of these massive threads together, what does this actually mean for the listener? We've covered an immense amount of ground today.
A huge landscape.
We've gone from the holding cells of a British police station with a royal inside, to the flight decks of nuclear aircraft carriers in the Arabian Sea, to the chambers of the Supreme Court.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the absolute core takeaway is stark. The legacy institutions you have been told your entire life to implicitly trust.
The royal family.
The royal family, the federal justice system, the financial markets, the mainstream political parties, they are all systematically cracking.
The foundation is giving way.
They are cracking under the immense, unsustainable weight of their own compounded corruption and the massive, unpayable debt that sustains their power. They are terrified of losing control. They are desperate.
And as we know from history, desperate people do incredibly dangerous things.
Exactly. They lash out. So the one absolute thing you need to remember as you navigate the rest of this week is this. The United States is currently hours away from a potential catastrophic regional war with Iran.
A war nobody voted for.
A war that is not being driven by any clear, logical, strategic need for the American people. It is being driven by institutional desperation, by deep-state blackmail, and by a frantic need to distract the populace from domestic economic and political collapse.
Keep your eyes on the fleet.
Watch the USS Abraham Lincoln. If that ship launches strike packages into Iranian airspace, the world as we know it changes overnight.
That is an incredibly sobering but necessary thought to end on. We are living through historic times, and the timeline is moving incredibly fast.
It is accelerating. You have to stay vigilant. Do not blindly trust the official narrative. And always, always demand to see the hard data.
Absolutely. Well said. If you found this deep dive valuable, if you want to keep peeling back the layers of the geopolitical onion with us, please hit the plus or follow button on your app and give us a like. It really helps us bypass the algorithms and keep the truth flowing. Subscribe to the Hot News channel for more deep dives just like this one. Until we meet again, goodbye.